Hello and welcome to Disneyland Paris for Grown-Ups. My name's Andy and on this channel we're here to guide you through your Disneyland Paris adventure. While Disneyland resorts all over the world are magical places for young and old alike, here in Europe we're fortunate enough to have Disneyland Paris right on our doorstep. In our videos we hope to bring you valuable information to enhance your Disneyland Paris stay, make your journey easier and stress-free as possible, while showing you some hidden little details about the Parisian park. But before we begin, don't forget to click that subscribe button below and be sure whilst you're there to check the bell icon to get updates direct to your desktop, tablet or phone telling you when we upload more great Disney video content. Many of us Disneyland Paris fans have been pining for our favourite park over the last few months. Unfortunately, back in March the park was shut down due to the spread of the coronavirus here in Europe. Ever since then, many of us have been longing for the day for the park to reopen, desperate to know when we can visit our favourite Disney rides and characters again. In this video we're going to be taking a look at when we can expect the park to reopen. Also, we're going to be taking a detailed look at what restrictions or changes might be in place on your next Disneyland Paris holiday. The first thing you're probably all desperate to know, if you're watching this, is when will the park reopen? Now, there's been lots of speculation about this. However, as of yesterday, the 28th of May 2020, the French government announced a date that Disneyland Park, or theme parks across the country, can reopen, and that is on the 22nd of June 2020. At the moment, this is just guidance on when theme parks, as well as cinemas and other gathering type venues, can reopen. However, it is unlikely at the moment that Disney themselves will open the park completely on this day. It is likely in the coming weeks, as guidelines and publications come out, that Disney will need to formulate a plan for reopening the park, so it may be a few days after this date that the park officially reopens. However, the positive good news that we can all take from this is that there is a date that the park is expected to reopen, and we can all start looking forward to our first trips back to the park when it does. The biggest question many of you will probably have, however, is what restrictions can we expect to be in place when the park does reopen? Fortunately, we do have some information along the lines of other parks that have reopened, so parts of Disneyland parks have reopened in the States, as well as the Shanghai Disneyland has reopened fully, so we can use some of the information gleaned from those reopenings to understand what might be happening when Disneyland Paris does reopen. First up, will you be able to visit the park when it reopens? Well, this is an interesting question. At the moment, in Shanghai Disneyland, there is a significant restriction on the number of people who can visit the park. Over in Shanghai, the capacity of the park is around 75,000 people, and here in Disneyland Paris, the capacity is around 85,000 people. Now, the government in China have set a restriction of around 24,000 visitors visiting the park in Shanghai. It is likely in Paris that there will also be similar restrictions on the number of people who can visit. It is also worth noting that Disney, as a corporation, have reduced the numbers in Shanghai even further to help maintain safety within the park. So it's likely the number of visitors allowed in Shanghai is around 20,000 people, and we can expect to see similar numbers, maybe 20 to 25,000 people, only being allowed in Disneyland Paris. What is also likely, especially if you are an annual pass holder, is that you will have to let Disneyland know that you are intending to visit. This is so they can help plan the number of people visiting the park. So, you have booked your holiday and you've made it to the park. What can you expect once you arrive at the gates? Well, in Disneyland Paris, if you are familiar with the park, you will know that you have to walk underneath the Disneyland Hotel to get to the entry turnstiles. It is likely, we know from places in America that have reopened and also in China, that they will be doing health checks on you when you arrive. This may include checking your temperature before you're admitted to the park. It is also likely that you will be expected to use some sort of face covering or mask at the park. This is likely to cause large queues at the entrance, and there is also likely to be markers in place to help separate people at a reasonable distance, maybe a 2-meter distance, to prevent people bunching up whilst waiting in the queues to get into the park. Once you are, however, in the park, with the significantly reduced numbers of guests being allowed, you will probably find that it's not too difficult to spread yourself out away from other guests. The next big question is what it's going to mean for rides in the park. Well, with what rides are running, as there may be restricted numbers of staff and therefore not all rides may be available, with the rides that are running, you are likely to find that they put restrictions in place to separate guests out. As an example, on rides like Pirates of the Caribbean or the Small World ride, you may find that every other row in the boats is left empty so that you are separated from other guests. This may also apply on roller coasters, where every other row on the roller coaster is left empty to separate guests from one another. And again, you are obviously likely to see in the queues markers in place to separate guests to make sure that they keep a reasonable distance from one another. This will, and it may look quite scary, but it will increase the size of the queues quite dramatically. And with restrictions in place on the way that the rides are loaded, you may find waiting times are very long as a result. This is something that has been seen in Shanghai Disneyland, where waiting times are dramatically longer for rides. Meet and greets are also likely to be significantly limited. It is noted in China they are not doing any meet and greets where you are able to get close to the cast members. What they have been doing is having, say, Mickey Mouse standing on a bridge or at a train station over the guests, and therefore you can take your selfies with Mickey Mouse in the background, but you can't actually have photographs taken with the characters. The dining experiences in Disneyland Paris are obviously one of the best parts of the Parisian park. They have some truly amazing restaurants. What you are likely to find is, again, queues are designed in a way that separates guests out, and in parks and places that have reopened, they have been leaving every other table reserved to again separate guests from one another in the restaurants. Or initially in China they were doing this in the outside terraces, but now they have deemed it unnecessary to separate guests in the outside spaces. So you may find when the park does reopen that you may or may not be separated depending on whether you are inside or outside the restaurants. Shopping at Disneyland Paris is also likely to see some changes. It is very likely that there will be large perspex screens at tills and checkouts in order to help sort of create a barrier between guests and cast members during shopping transactions. It is also possible that contactless payment will be the preferred method of payment at tills and also at restaurants to prevent the risk of contamination through using cash money. We may also see restrictions on areas where food is sold, such as the snack counters. In Disneyland Paris there are a lot of little snack type places where you can buy treats such as biscuits and cakes and fudge and things like that, and these are served to you by the cast members by hand. These may be restricted as well, and the only snacks being sold may be ones limited to those that are wrapped in plastic and are not handled by the cast members. Other changes you may see throughout the park is that water fountains will be switched off. It is likely that you will see more hand sanitizer stations dotted around the place, so that you can easily apply alcohol gel or hand sanitizer to your hands whilst you're walking around the park. Doors have been removed from bathrooms so that you have direct routes in and out of bathrooms without touching the doors. Something that has been noted in America is trash cans have had the flaps removed from the tops of the cans so that you don't have to touch the trash cans to throw away your rubbish. In Shanghai, in China, some of the rides have been installed with plastic disposable gloves so that you can use disposable gloves whilst you ride the ride, so whilst you're holding onto railings or when pulling the safety bar towards you to lock yourself in the ride, so that then the next person comes along and they are not touching the same area that you have just touched with their bare hands. They are also using gloves, so everyone is sort of shielded from one another by the use of these plastic gloves, similar to the sort of things that you would find in a petrol station or gas station to help you keep your hands clean whilst using the petrol pumps. Some other things that have been suggested in America is parking cars alternately so that there is at least one car's gap between the cars in the car park. Disneyland Paris has an extremely large car park. This is something that could reasonably and easily be done. One thing that also might take place, which we have seen in the parks in America with Disney Springs reopening, is that they may, in Disneyland Paris, reopen the Disney Village first, more as a test or as a trial to see how they're going to roll out the restrictions across the rest of the park, so we wait to see whether that happens or not. So that's all the information that we have so far on what is going on in Disneyland Paris. We know roughly when it is going to reopen, we know roughly from other parks what restrictions may or may not be in place. However, we do not know for sure, so what do you think will happen when Disneyland Paris reopens? When do you think it reopens? Let us know in the comments section below. If you have found this video useful, why not give us a thumbs up? Clicking on the little icon just below this video, and do be sure, if you haven't already done so, to click that subscribe button to make sure that you get all our latest videos. We're going to be following this story fairly closely over the coming weeks to let you know what is going to happen or what isn't going to happen as soon as we get the news. So thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next video.